It's the dead of winter in 1947, the kind of cold that bites right through your bones. With temperatures plunging to minus 15 degrees Fahrenheit in the sleepy town of Rutland, Vermont, where folks are huddled around their stoves, piling on every blanket they own just to keep from freezing in their own living rooms. But right in the middle of all that misery, there's one house glowing with warmth. The inside, sitting at a comfortable 70 degrees, like a little slice of springtime, have been trapped indoors. And the man responsible isn't some big-shot inventor from the city with fancy degrees and endless funding. No, he's just a 34-year-old carpenter named Robert McNamara, a World War II veteran who's come home to a country that is still picking up the pieces after the war. And he's figured out a way to turn scraps and ruins into a fortress against the frost, leaving his neighbors scratching their heads in disbelief and maybe a touch of envy as they watch steam rise from his chimney with barely any wood being burned. You see, back then, America was in the grip of a massive housing shortage. Millions of soldiers like Robert returning from the front lines, eager to start families and settle down, but there just weren't enough homes to go around. Prices were rocketing. Materials were scarce because everything had gone to the war effort. And in places like Vermont, where winters could drag on for months with snowdrifts taller than a man, finding a place that was both affordable and warm seemed like an impossible dream. But Robert, with his calloused hands and sharp mind honed from years of building and fixing things under pressure during the war, sought opportunity where others saw junk. Especially in those surplus Quonset huts the military was selling off cheap. Those semi-cylindrical metal shells that had sheltered troops in the Pacific and Europe, now stacked in warehouses gathering dust. Available for as little as $300, which was a steal even then, but most people dismissed them as ugly, temporary fixes. Good for garages or storage sheds maybe, not for raising a family in the long haul. Robert, though, had grown up hearing stories from his father about an old farmhouse on the edge of town that had burned down back in the 1890s, leaving behind a sturdy stone basement that had stood the test of time, its thick walls made from local field stone, nearly 2 feet wide in spots, built by craftsmen who knew how to make things last through generations of harsh New England weather. And his dad always marveled at how that basement stayed cool in the sweltering summers and held on to warmth in the winters, like the earth itself was lending a hand in keeping things steady. So when Robert came across that forgotten foundation while walking the property, one crisp spring day, his mind started racing with ideas. Picturing how he could marry this ancient, grounded structure with the modern, no-fuss efficiency of a Quonset hut, creating something that wasn't just a roof over his head, but a smart, self-sustaining home that could laugh in the face of the coldest blasts Old Man Winter could throw. He wasn't alone in this venture. His younger brother Thomas, another vet, fresh from the service, pitched in, the two of them rolling up their sleeves in April to clear out the debris, scraping away decades of dirt and rotted timbers, reinforcing the stone walls with fresh mortar where cracks had formed from years of neglect. And as they worked, Robert explained his vision, how the basement would act like a natural insulator, buried partially in the earth to shield against the wind and temperature swings, while the Quonset hut arched over it like a protective shell. And though Thomas nodded along, deep down he wondered if his brother was onto something revolutionary or just chasing a fool-ass errand that might leave them both out in the cold. But as the foundation took shape under their hands, whispers started spreading through Rutland about the McNamara boys and their odd project. Some folks chuckling at the idea of living in what looked like a half-buried tin can. Others curious enough to stop by and watch. And little did they know, the real genius lay in how Robert was blending the old world's wisdom with the new era's ingenuity, setting the stage for a winter that would prove everyone wrong and spark a quiet revolution in how people thought about keeping warm. With the basement cleaned and sturdy by late spring, Robert turned his attention to the Quonset hut itself, which arrived in June on the back of a flatbed truck, all disassembled in neat stacks of corrugated steel panels, ribs, and bolts. The kind of kit that the military had cranked out by the thousands during the war for quick setup in remote bases. And he pored over the assembly instructions that came with it. He was anchoring this thing right onto the uneven lip of a century-old stone foundation. So he spent evenings in his makeshift workshop sketching out custom metal brackets, drilling precise holes into the stone with a borrowed masonry bit that whined and sparked under the strain, and enlisting Thomas to help hoist the arched ribs into place, one by one. The two brothers sweating under the summer sun as they bolted everything together over 2 grueling weeks, cursing when pieces didn't align perfectly but grinning when the structure finally started to take shape, looking like a giant metal tunnel rising from the earth, about 40 feet long and 20 feet wide, with enough headroom inside to feel spacious rather than claustrophobic. To make it livable, Robert dug the basement floor down another 2 feet, giving the lower level 8-foot ceilings and exposing more of the Earth's natural cool air below. which he knew from his dad's tailies would hover around a steady 50 degrees year-round. He scavenged a used cast-iron wood stove from a neighbor's barn, installing it smack in the center of the basement, where its heat could radiate outward through the thick stone walls, turning them into what he called a thermal battery that soaked up warmth during the day and released it slowly through the night. Insulation was key too, since the Quonset's thin metal skin could turn into an icebox without it. So Robert got creative, and even crumpling up newspapers and cardboard into the gaps for extra bulk, creating a patchwork barrier that trapped air and blocked the cold. And he added small windows punched into the upper Quonset walls for natural light, plus a simple partition upstairs for sleeping quarters, while the basement became the heart of the home with space for cooking, eating, and gathering. The whole setup designed so the warmer air from below rose naturally to heat the top without much effort. His wife Helen, practical as ever, with their 2 young daughters in tow, helped with the finishing touches. And as August rolled around and the project wrapped up, Robert stood back, surveying his creation, the arched metal gleaming in the late summer light above the sunken stone base, a hybrid that blended the rugged efficiency of wartime engineering with the timeless stability of Vermont's rocky soil. Calling it an eyesore or a temporary fix at best, Robert felt a quiet confidence, knowing he'd poured his skills and smarts into something that honored the past while embracing the future. Neighbors dropped by more often now, reinforcing Robert's belief that he was onto something timeless. But as the leaves turned and the first frosts nipped the air, the big question hanging over Rutland was whether this quirky contraption would hold up when the real winter storms hit, or if the Mignamoras would be left shivering like everyone else, regretting the whole bold experiment. October came, and the Mignamoras moved into their new home just as the Vermont hills blazed with fall colors. Helen unpacking boxers, while the girls scampered around the bright open spaces lit by those clever upper windows. And Robert fired up the wood stove for the first time, watching with satisfaction as the stone walls warmed gently, the heat spreading evenly without the drafts that plagued traditional frame houses. And by December, when nights dipped to -10, the interior hummed along at 68 degrees with only a few logs tossed in morning and evening. Using maybe a quarter of the firewood their neighbors burned through in their leaky old farmhouses, where folks complained of chilly corners and soaring fuel bills amid the post-war shortages. Then January 1948 brought the real test, a ferocious blizzard that blanketed Rutland in 2 feet of snow over 5 days, winds howling at 40 miles an hour, and temperatures locked below zero. The kind of storm that had people boarding up windows and rationing their coal. But inside the Quonset stone hybrid, it was a different world. The earth-sheltered basement blocking the gusts like a natural windbreak, the thermal mass of the walls holding steady at 70 degrees even as the mercury outside hit -15. And Helen later recalled how they sipped hot cocoa in spritz leaves, the home so quiet and snug that the storm felt like a distant rumble, with the family barely noticing the chaos beyond their door. And astonishingly, they used less wood during that brutal stretch than in milder weeks, proving Robert's design wasn't just surviving winter but thriving in it, turning what could have been hardship into comfort through smart, low-cost innovation. Word spread like wildfire after the thaw, with curious visitors trudging up the path in spring to see for themselves, some touching the warm stone walls in awe, others peppering Robert with questions about how the Earth's constant temperature insulated the base, how the Quonset's curve shed snow effortlessly, and how the whole system mimicked ancient Earth homes while using modern surplus materials, inspiring a few copycats like his brother Thomas, who built a similar setup on his own land, and a local farmer named Dutch Steinberg, who adapted the idea for a workshop that stayed warm enough for winter chores without any stove at all, just relying on the ground's heat. Over the years, the home became a quiet legend in Rutland, standing the test of time as families came and went, with modifications like added electricity and plumbing in the 50s. But the core design remaining intact, and today, it's still there, owned by a retired teacher who heats it with a tiny bit of propane, paying far less than her neighbors who battled drafts in conventional houses. A testament to how post-war resourcefulness could spark lasting change in housing, reminding us that sometimes the best ideas come from blending the old with the new, especially in an era when veterans like Robert turned necessity into invention, influencing broader trends in earth-sheltered and efficient homes that we'd see more of in later decades. It has stories like this that show how ordinary people can rewrite the rules against nature as harshest challenges. And if you've stuck with me through this tale of grit and genius, do me a favor and smash that like button if it warmed your heart. Subscribe so you don't miss more hidden gems from history's forgotten innovators. And drop a comment below sharing your own clever hacks for beating the cold. Who knows? Your idea might inspire the next big thing.